Development of the periodic table. Before the discovery of protons, neutrons and electrons, scientists tried several ways to classify the elements. One of the ways they tried was by putting them together in small groups where their properties were similar. Other scientists tried by putting them in order of their atomic mass. As a result of this, the early examples of periodic tables were incomplete, and because the order of atomic mass was followed, this meant that some elements were placed in groups which were incorrect. Dmitry Mendeleev is thought by most scientists to be the inventor of the modern periodic table. He was intent on making sure that similar elements were in the same group. In order to do this, he left gaps in his periodic table. The reason for this was not that he thought that the periodic table was wrong, but just that scientists hadn't yet discovered some of the elements. Leaving gaps meant that he could put elements with similar properties together. Another thing that he did was to not strictly follow the order of atomic weight. What he did was swap elements when it turned out that this would mean that the properties of the elements were better lined up. At the time, Mendeleev didn't know why he needed to swap atomic weights, but once isotopes had been discovered, it explained why the order based on atomic weights wasn't always correct. For example, the isotope that was known in the time of Mendeleev could have been heavier or lighter than the periodic table would predict it to be. As well as creating the periodic table, Mendeleev even went so far as to predict properties of elements that would fit into the gaps. So, for instance, Mendeleev knew the properties of silicon because that is an element that has been known about for thousands of years. He used the properties of silicon to predict the properties of the element that would go into the gap directly below it, which at his time wasn't yet discovered. It turned out that his predictions of these elements were very, very accurate. It turned out that Mendeleev was right to swap elements rather than go strictly on order of atomic mass, because we now know that isotopes exist. Isotopes, as we already know, are elements which have more than one form with different atomic masses. It doesn't matter what the mass of the isotope is, the chemical properties are still the same. So using the properties of the element to place it in the position on the periodic table, which was the method that Mendeleev used, was definitely the correct method.